Hello, everyone. It is Sunday, the 14th of January, 2024. And was I wrong about flat Earth? Was I wrong? Should I be calling it true Earth? Should I be calling it globe Earth? I don't know. Should I be calling it an electrical magnetic reality that's being projected on a flat plane of inertia via hyperboloids and toroidal fields? That one. True Earth, whatever you want to call it. And so, being projected on a flat plane of existence or reality. So spoiler alert right at front. No, I was not wrong. But my videos on flat Earth seem to be gaining a lot of traction. There's a lot of popularity now, even though I share groundbreaking information on so many different false flags. I talked about the Reichstag fire yesterday, even that no one even really has even talked about ever. I haven't seen anything online about this being discussed, and how the person that was decapitated for that fire, there's no way that he would have committed it. And he was beheaded at 24 years old, blamed for it, and then claimed to be a communist. And then Adolf Hitler and Germany declared more atrocities against humanity because of it, and put in place more restrictions and policies that further I guess restricted. It's the same thing, being redundant. Restricted the his country, and then also multiple other countries throughout Europe. Europe being a lot smaller than people understand or believe. And so I want to let me see. I was already talking about Claydex. Take a look at that. So many things. But the Reichstag fire. Let me see what else I can talk to you guys about before I get into the flat Earth videos. So a newly discovered, actually, I'll share that first because it is interesting. I'll go with this one. Excuse me. A newly discovered witnessed account by an ex-Nazi officer has cast fresh doubt on claims a Dutch communist was behind the 1933 Reichstag fire. The blaze was used by the Nazis to crack down on their opponents, and this was published on on July 27th, 2019. A recently uncovered witness testimony has cast further mystery over Nazi-era claims that a Dutch communist was behind the 1933 Reichstag fire in Berlin. The fire, which gutted the German parliament building, that's what Reichstag means in German, by the way, it means parliament, so that people are aware, is viewed by historians as a pivotal moment in Adolf Hitler's seizure of total power. It was a pivotal moment. The Nazi Party used the event to justify an emergency decree and crack down on communists who were blamed for the blaze. Does this sound like January 6th? Does this sound like Freedom Convoy? Does this sound like so many other events, like Northwoods, that didn't actually happen, but there was full support by multiple levels of government, including high-ranking military officials? Does that sound familiar, Wayne Eyre? Excuse me. So Germany's RND newspaper group on Friday published a 1955 affidavit found in the archives of a Hanover court. In the account by Hans Martin Lennings, a former member of the Nazis' paramilitary SA unit, Lennings stated that he drove Dutch communist Marinus van der Lubbe, this is the guy that was accused, to the Reichstag on the night of the fire. So Nazis' paramilitary SA unit, he was part of that unit. So he drove him to Parliament. According to the testimony, when Lennings and his SA group brought van der Lubbe to the Reichstag, they noticed a strange smell of burning, and there were clouds of smoke billowing through the rooms. It's unclear why the SA unit would have brought van der Lubbe from an infirmary to the Reichstag, but the statement suggests the fire had already started by the time they arrived. So there's no way that he would have been able to, and he got convicted for the blaze. And then when you torture people, by the way, people can't admit to things that they haven't done. And I've even shared countless videos of that as well for my cognitive science degree, studying even children and adults that where there was false testimony because of repeatedly being in a chronic state of fear, a lot of lies, a lot of misleading them, and sleep deprivation and all that other stuff, and saying, we know you did it, we know all the stuff that happens with interrogations and stuff like that, that leads to faulty I guess you'd say admittals or whatever you want to call it, that are not actually true. And so before I get into flat Earth, I also wanted to show you the rainbow in the world and the worm. Very, very interesting. And I got the book. It's on its way, but I wanted to look at some scientific and PubMed kind of dissertations on it, and very, very interesting stuff. And it was by a guy named Ho. Yeah. What is life? So that's the question that is possibly answered in The Rainbow and the Worm, and then another book that he did after that, where he also discusses light, crystallized light. The Rainbow and the Worm set out to answer the question, what is life? That Schrodinger asked. Many people thought he provided the answer by postulating DNA as the genetic material. That was only part of the answer. The other part he suggested was quantum coherence, a state of being whole that involves molecules acting in perfectly correlated ways and in special thermodynamics of life, which he referred to as negentropy or negative entropy. Following these leads, I extended conventional quantum physics and non-equilibrium thermodynamics to provide the tentative answer, drawing on the work, especially of Herbert Froelich, Fritz Albert Popp, and Kenneth Denbigh, and empirical evidence from the scientific literature and my own research. Life in the ideal is a domain that captures and stores energy, electricity and magnetism, if you want to be specific, or electricity and dielectricity. But I'm more along the lines of like electricity and magnetism, and the necessity of water molecules within that as well, and mobilizes its quantum coherently in perfectly coupled cycles that generate no entropy. This is a very compact statement, but it took years and several editions of the book to get to this conclusion, and the implications are rich, which is why it took the entire book to develop it. They range from the physics of sustainable systems to the naturalistic ethics universally adopted by all cultures, that of doing no harm to others. In a quantum coherent universe, all beings are both localized as particle solid objects and delocalized as quantum wave functions spread ultimately throughout the universe. Hence, all beings are mutually entangled and mutually constitutive. Thus, harming others effectively harms ourselves, and the best way to benefit oneself may be to benefit others, which is why giving like works of charity, creating, being good to people, all these things are good. Living Rainbow H2O is a sequel to The Rainbow and the Worm, and I really want to read this book as well, concentrating on the latest findings in the quantum physics and chemistry of the liquid crystalline water. So I talk about this a lot as well, with like the rays of the sun and the moon radiating and generating, electrical versus magnetic, positive versus negative, cooling versus heating, centripetal versus centrifugal. I can go on, but that is why water is the means, medium, and message of life. So water is the means, medium, and message of life. Very important. It is the rainbow within because its liquid crystalline state enables molecules to line up and move coherently together, creating interference colors when viewed under the polarizing microscope, which are the stuff of rainbows. Even though, like, if you look at like pyramids or crystal pyramids, whatever you want to call it, like for light refraction, like at certain angles for different colors, like that's how you get like the colors of the rainbow is through white light through crystal, which is also like at the low, at the subatomic, like at the water molecules at the lowest level, whatever you want to call it. Hard to explain this stuff. A whole new cell biology and biology of life is emerging based on water that has been completely left out of the reductionist and overly mechanistic biology of the mainstream. Yeah. So why have so few people taken up the Erwin Schrödinger, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist and author of the 1944 classic book, What is Life, left off in terms of trying to mix physics with biology? Lack of courage in addressing big questions or to disagree with the mainstream, lack of imagination, lack of funding, too much concentration on molecular nuts and bolts, domination of reductionist biology. He's talking about like the finite, like the people that do like the theoretical physicist stuff, like the string theory, very specific things, okay, that go nowhere, and you're getting such a very micro level view of reality, and you're not understanding the actual, like the actual macro level stuff, right? Which completely impacts your stuff. Too much specialization and lack of interdisciplinary training, lack of appreciation of the beauty of nature. And then he says, in my opinion, to really understand nature, one needs to both be a romantic poet and artistic at heart. And it goes into it here about like even with healing techniques, using frequencies, vibrations, and waves, non-destructive, minimally invasive observations is the key to really knowing and understanding organisms, i.e. with the utmost sensitivity in all of one's senses, including one's appreciation of beauty and love, so that the known is most itself at the lower, as the knower is most herself. Discovering that truth made me realize the violence we do not only to nature, but most to ourselves. Through traditional invasive techniques, we lose the sensitivity that makes us most alive and most ready to be inspired. So even like with medications and surgeries, like now these friggin' like brain friggin' chips they want to put in us, like this is not the answer to how we evolve and optimize our genetics. So this is all very interesting. And this is just kind of like a dissertation on these books. And so I would like to read the books as well and not just read the dissertations and get someone else's opinion of it. But these are him being interviewed. So that was a question and answer. So coming right from his mouth. And so I just wanted to share that. And so anyway, sacred geometry is very interesting as well. But yeah, the mind is the conduit of how we experience like our higher levels of consciousness or our spirit, and our body, like the avatar, like is how we're experiencing like this realm, right? With the mind being like the conduit to both.
I want you to note that piece of white.
Hello again, everyone. Hope you're doing well, and thanks for joining us for another video. Now, for centuries, it's been an established fact that the reason ships sailing out to sea disappear from the bottom up is due to the curvature of Earth blocking our line of sight. Disappear from the bottom up is due to the curvature of Earth.
Right out the gate, he shows us the effects of an inferior mirage and calls it Earth curve instead. Not a good start, Dave.
Disappear from the bottom up is due to the curvature of Earth.
Demonstrate how that lens bends light waves to create a mirage. Ed brings in a helicopter.
Okay, come toward us at maybe 10 knots at 5 feet ATL if you can, over.
Just now, the ground is much warmer than the air above it. This creates a gradient of hot to cold air. And since cold air is denser or those layers act like a lens, bending and distorting our familiar reality. The result is a classic mirage, where objects appear below their actual position.
As the helicopter lands, you see its landing gear begin to vanish into the mirage. This is only one of a few different ways bottom-first obstruction occurs on our flat Earth.
Sequence is one of my favorite sequences with mirages. You can see it in the distance. You don't know what that is. It looks like a spaceship coming at you. Yeah. It's a black blob. Yeah. And this is on a highway in New Mexico. You have no idea what it is, and slowly it emerges. It still looks like a spaceship right there.
Yeah. It's
and
floating in the air.
It's floating in the air. It seems to be floating in the air. Then when we get up here, you see it. It's a car with two trucks behind it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? That just shows that your eyes can deceive you so much with this.
Well, it's not your eyes that are deceiving. Your eyes aren't deceiving anything. What it is the lens of the air between the object and what you're seeing. That's the deception.
However, flat earthers obviously have to offer a different explanation, and the reason that I've seen most commonly given is due to the Rayleigh criterion, sometimes phrased along the lines of it's perspective or it's a limit to our vision, which it's not. So in this video, I'm going to try and break down as simply as possible to show why. The problem with all of this is that objects disappearing due to being unresolvable don't disappear from the bottom up like flat earthers claim. For example, I had Brian's Logic arguing with me a while ago, saying that
I'm not Brian's Logic, Flatzoid, or any other person you have made videos about. Claiming to debunk one person's words does not debunk the entire body of knowledge that is out there. Oftentimes when angular resolution is up for debate, globe proponents along with some flat earth proponents will fail to mention the effects a visible surface has on your perspective. Any visible flaw, such as land and water, wall or ceiling, will compress your visual angles when looking along it, depending on the distance from the surface. When there is no visible surface, such as looking up at the sky, your visual angles remain open. This all plays a huge role in how far we can actually see. We will go into further detail soon, but let's continue.
we can't see a 6-foot object 3 miles away, so therefore we can't see the bottom 6 foot of any object 3 miles away. But his reason for that was that it had to be either due to perspective or due to the globe horizon. That it can't be both. That objects can't appear to both get smaller and smaller as they get further away, but then also be blocked by the physical curvature of Earth.
Brian was partially right in saying that Earth curve calculators do not take any part of perspective into account, but of course angular resolution will always apply, no matter the shape of any surface you're on. Dave is simply taking advantage of a poorly constructed argument that failed to mention the proximity of a viewer to that of a surface.
You only have to stand next to an inclined road to know that that's not the case. You can see cars driving up a hill, and they will appear to get smaller and smaller as they get further from you. Once they crest the hill, they begin to disappear bottom up. And that's because the Earth is blocking our line of sight to them.
The problem with the globe, though, is that Earth hill or bulge is simply not there. This has been demonstrated in several different ways, including that of VHF waves and other line-of-sight technologies. Here are just 2 examples.
Before the start of World War II, German scientists developed a blind landing navigation system for aircraft. Essentially, aircraft tuned in to a certain frequency would know the location of the center of the runway by using a radio beacon as a guide. After World War II broke out, German military scientists soon realized that the same technology could enable German bombers to locate specific targets in England, even in the darkest of nights. This secret system was called Knickbein. In short, the radio beam from a single transmitter would guide the German bombers on a line towards the target. But one beam could not tell the bomber when they were over the target. A second transmitter was set up so its beam crossed over the target, indicating when the airplanes should drop the bombs. British intelligence, led by R.V. Jones, slowly became aware that such bombing beams may have existed, and presented the information to Frederick Lindemann, Winston Churchill's leading science advisor. But Lindemann and others said such a targeting system would be impossible, because the supposed curvature of the Earth would block the high-frequency beams, because VHF waves do not even allegedly bend around the curvature of the Earth.
Dr. Jones took the message to Professor Lindemann, his old tutor and now scientific advisor to Winston Churchill, and tried to persuade him of the serious threat posed by the Knickbein beams. But Lindemann was not convinced, pointing out that at the high frequencies necessary for an accurate beam, the curvature of the Earth would prevent its being directed against targets in Britain.
Lindemann was conceptually and mathematically right. VHF beams would require a direct line of sight with the German bombers, and England was simply too far away. The first of these Knickbein transmitters was set up on Stolberg Hill near Denmark. Another transmitter was set up at Kleve in western Germany. Stolberg Hill was located 443 miles away from Derby, England. The hill was only 142 feet high, and the transmitter was 152 feet high for a combined height of 294 feet. Based on the globe map, the Earth's curvature would hide 118,425 feet. The other transmitter was in Kleve. It only has an elevation of 39 feet combined with a 100-foot tower. 139-foot height with a distance of 331 miles means that the curvature of the Earth would hide 66,722 feet. In other words, under the globe, a German bomber would need to be higher than 118,425 feet to be within the line of sight of the Knickbein system. But the maximum cruising altitude of a German bomber was only 19,200 feet. Without question, it was impossible under the globe for those German bombers to be within line of sight of the Knickbein towers. But Knickbein did work, and English lives were lost as Churchill's scientific advisors couldn't believe in the VHF Knickbein system when the Earth's curvature should have made it impossible. Very high frequency requires a direct line of sight. Wikipedia confirms the same as it reads, as the transmitters were more or less in line of sight to high-altitude bombers. This article here confirmed it as well. But as I just showed, Wikipedia lied, as German bombers would have been nearly 100,000 feet below the globe's geometric horizon and certainly not within line of sight of the towers. There you have it. Only under the flat Earth model could the Knickbein system work, and the globe propagandists have no counter-argument but to lie and claim that the bombers were somehow in line of sight of the Knickbein towers when that would have been mathematically impossible. German bombing beams proved there is no Earth curvature. Hello, everyone. I first wanted to thank Scott from Israel for sharing this information with me. I hope you find this evidence as exciting and compelling as I do. In short, this is another world record proof of the flat Earth. This evidence alone ends the globe. The world record comes from this website called The Things Network. I'll have a link in the description. As the title states, this was a LoRa radio transmission at a whopping distance of 830 miles or 1,336 kilometers. For those who do not know, LoRa is actually becoming a very important method of communication, and it also has tremendous potential for long-distance flat Earth testing. Here's a quick video clip describing what LoRa is.
LoRa stands for long range, and it's a relatively new communication standard targeting low power, long range, low bitrate communication. So it's really finding applications in Internet of Things, remote sensors, anything that requires low power consumption and a moderate to low bandwidth.
LoRa is in the ultra high frequency UHF radio bandwidth, between 860 to 930 megahertz. It is important to note that UHF does not, even allegedly, bend with the curvature of the Earth. In fact, according to this website, LoRa is line of sight. According to the article, LoRa's range depends on radio line of sight. Radio waves in the 400 to 900 megahertz range may pass through some obstructions, depending on their composition, but will be absorbed or reflected otherwise. This means that the signal can potentially reach as far as the horizon, as long as there are no physical barriers to block it. In other words, LoRa communications end at the alleged globe geometric horizon. But this world record LoRa communication was at a distance of 830 miles. What makes this even more remarkable is that the LoRaWAN trackers were placed on a fishing boat and a buoy. Here are the pictures. This world record communication occurred at almost sea level. Assuming an observer height of 20 feet, that gives us a globe target hidden height of 448,550 feet, or 85 miles. At only 20 feet, the signal from the boat should have been blocked by the supposed Earth's bulge at around 5.5 miles. There is only one reasonable conclusion. The Earth has no curvature. The Earth is flat.
And it can't be that we can't resolve the bottom 6 foot of objects 3 miles away because of limits to our vision, because that would then mean that we couldn't resolve the bottom 6 foot of any object that's 3 miles away. And yet we can resolve the bottom 6 foot of a plane when it's 3 miles away, no problem. We don't just see half a plane suddenly cut off.
That's because there is no ground to compress your bottom visual angle while looking at objects in the sky. It's not until they reach your visual horizon that things will be cut off from your view. It's time you learn this, Dave.
So this is across a lake nearby, which on a perfectly clear day, decent weather, and it's about 410 feet across to the other side. Where there'll be a piece of debris that you will see here in a minute. So I'll go ahead and play. So I'm lowering my iPhone from about a 2-foot height down to just where the water ripples. And that's just when the casing on the iPhone just barely touches the water. There, so the camera is inverted. It ends up being about a ½ inch above the water. This is zoomed in. You can see the white piece of debris by the bench to the lower left of the bench across the way. So you'll see there, it's gone. And I haven't even touched the water yet. There, I touched the water and it's back again. So I decided to put some measurements to this, which we'll discuss in a minute. I also want you to note that piece of white debris right there in the center of the frame that is very nearby, around 15 feet away. And how close that gets to the horizon as we lower our phone down. So these are some still shots from what I just showed. So again, distance is 410 feet, and that near field debris is the red arrow in the left picture there in the low aspect of the frame. And then as I, at about a 2-foot observer height, and then at about a 0.5 inch observer height, you can see how high in the field that piece of debris got near the purple mirror inflection point or horizon line of this image. So again, keep in mind that if this is, let's say it's 10 to 15 feet away, and the distance between myself and the debris on the other side is 410 feet, that I am cramming 400 feet of information between the red tip of that arrow and the purple horizon line, which is a lot of information. And so what ends up happening is that your horizon shortens along the lower field, and whatever is there disappears into the essentially a gap that's formed. So again, this is just a typical photo with a iPhone camera about 6 feet off the water. And I am basically looking at a cresting wave, which you can see in the zoomed out photo. You don't even need to be zoomed in. You can see the little white dot that the arrow is pointing to in the middle of the frame. And then zoomed in, you can see it a little bit better. But how far is that cresting wave, do you think? So when you analyze this, you find that it's essentially about a ½ mile away. Each halving of a frame puts twice the amount of information in the next halving. So you can look at the 50% numbers on the side. You can look at the amount of information that I'm cramming into each subsection. And again, the proof of this you can find when I analyze the hallway footage. And you find that in, again, the lower 1/4 of the image, I have 9 feet, and then it goes 18 feet, 36 feet, 72 feet, and it doubles each time. And by the time you get to the arrow point, it's only about a ½ mile, which means that if I'm a 6-foot observer and I see 3 miles, then I'm cramming 2.5 miles between the very top black line and the purple line horizon, which is quite a lot of information to be crammed in such a small space. So I'm not going to go through this in too much detail. I want this to be short. Just remember that as you lower your eye height, you're cramming more and more information into a smaller space and it gets lost. So, but it remains 50% of your vision. So the floor is still 50%, even though you're not seeing as far along the floor. So what happens to that information in the distance? It disappears essentially into this, what I'll term, I guess, a horizon gap. And again, more information on this you can find on my channel or with the discussion with Jeranism. Same thing here. Again, at different heights, you can see how I'm compressing different information. So when I'm 8 foot tall, the ceiling is getting compressed. And as I get down to 1 foot tall or 0 feet, or essentially half a centimeter off, the floor is getting compressed. And this is just an aspect of how our vision works. It has nothing to do with curvature. So these spacings, again, just to reiterate, they are spacings along regular intervals that were measured. And you can see how that information changes as I alter my height to them. More and more information gets compressed into smaller spaces. And this is just taking them away from the photos to analyze them. And then putting kind of a side-on view, which again doesn't really exist, but just allows you to kind of conceptualize things a little bit easier. And some more math on how the floor tiles worked, the spacing along the lights, and how all the mathematics works out essentially to give us this halving phenomenon between each iteration of a frame. And this is at different heights, and again, how you see different aspects within each halving of an image, and how this phenomenon might allow for bottom first disappearance as the horizon along the lower field shortens, and we do not see as far along it. And what ends up happening is we form this gap of sorts in our vision. If we are close to the ceiling, let's say, and it were flat, we would have a gap along the ceiling, and we wouldn't see as far along the ceiling, but we would see as further along the floor. And the vice versa occurs when we are closer to the floor than we are to the ceiling. And my point with this is that we are always, when we are outdoors, closer to the floor than we are to the ceiling. So as I lower myself in this perspective here, and I have a light visible across about 400 feet or so, or 500 feet of distance along a hallway, you can see that the light is visible at first, and then as I lower myself, how perspective changes, and how at a certain point the light is no longer visible. And these are just everyday examples you can do on your own.
Okay. It seems to me like the volume is just too low. So I'm going to look for another one. I already have one up for Rumble, and then I'll go back to you. So this is Neil Tyson's Flat Earth Star Talk Debunked. Eric Dubé. He, look at his work. Support him, like his stuff. Great stuff. Get the volume on here, sorry.
We have video from space of the rotating spherical Earth. The Earth is round.
Thank you for joining. So tell me, Neil, is the Earth flat?
We have video from space of the rotating spherical Earth. The Earth is round.
Thank you for joining us on this episode.
No, we don't.
Just like NASA's other spokesperson, Michelle Thaler, whose top globe proofs I debunked in my previous video, Neil deGrasse Tyson's first go-to answer when asked for scientific evidence that Earth is a spinning ball says, "We know because pictures." You mean pictures like these, Neil? Pictures like these? And we have video from space of the rotating spherical Earth, he says. You mean videos like these, Neil? Well, I know you already know this, but pictures and videos like these obvious CGIs can be and are faked, and neither of those are permissible as scientific evidence.
What's odd is there are people who think Earth is flat,
right?
But recognize that the moon is round. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and the sun are all spheres, but Earth is flat. That's not, something doesn't square.
Something doesn't jive, right?
Okay.
So like a magician who distracts you with one hand while fooling you with the other, Neil commits what I call the appeal to the sky fallacy, claiming to provide scientific proof for the shape of the Earth under our feet by looking at a light in the sky. That's right. When you ask scientists for empirical, measurable proof of the shape of the Earth beneath our feet, they invariably, inevitably turn their noses up to the sky.
Like, would it make sense to think that the floor below you is globular just because the light bulb is? No.
And start talking
That's
about the
unrelated.
shape of things up there. Imagine inviting a contractor over to your house to measure the dimensions of your floor, and he immediately gets out his tape measure and starts measuring all the recessed lights in the ceiling.
So if you want to say Earth is flat, then, for example, lunar eclipses. What's a lunar eclipse? If your face is the brilliant sun,
Thank you.
and this is Earth, and the moon is over here, the sun is always casting Earth's shadow into space. It's always there no matter what.
Right.
So the moon occasionally passes through that shadow. And if you see the shape of Earth's shadow on the moon, it is always round. Always round. If Earth were flat,
Circular.
sometimes you get like a flat shadow.
Right.
We've never seen a flat shadow.
Right.
To this day, heliocentrists still offer this argument as proof of a spherical Earth, claiming that during lunar eclipses, the sun, earth, and moon align in a perfect 180-degree syzygy like 3 billiard balls, causing the sun to cast the Earth's shadow onto the moon. This clever but faulty assumption is rendered completely invalid, however, due to the fact that lunar eclipses have happened and continue to happen regularly when both the sun and moon are still visible together above the horizon. As early as the time of Pliny the Elder, there are records of eclipses happening while both the sun and moon were visible in the sky, and continue to be recorded by the Royal Astronomical Society today. Obviously, if the sun and moon are both observable simultaneously during an eclipse, then they are not aligned in a 180-degree syzygy, and it is therefore impossible that the sun could be casting Earth's shadow on the moon. And some other explanation must be sought.
The pair.
Another explanation, in
steroid.
fact, already
Hilarious.
existed in many cultures around the world, who posited that a third celestial body, known as Rahu, or the Black Sun, also existed, equal in size to the sun and moon. This translucent dark body passed affront the sun and moon during eclipses, causing their lights to dim. But regardless of what causes the moon's lights to dim during lunar eclipses, it has absolutely nothing to do with offering scientific proof of the shape of the Earth.
The famous experiment conducted by Eratosthenes. Eratosthenes. And there are two cities in the old world, and one of them, they knew that at 12 noon on a particular day of the year, that the sun was directly overhead and you could see the bottom of a well.
Oh, okay.
How can we use this observation to see if Earth's surface is curved? We needed another well. Turns out we can't see the bottom of both wells at the same time. What might explain this? Well, there are two possible explanations. First, we could have a flat Earth with a sun that's small and close by so that the light hits the second well at an angle. Or second, we could have a curved Earth with a sun that's big and far away so that all the light comes in parallel, but only one well at a time is lit all the way to the bottom.
For his next supposed proof, Neil brings up Eratosthenes, who noted that at noon during the summer solstice in Sienne, the sun cast no shadow and the rays could reach straight to the bottom of his well. Yet meanwhile, in Alexandria, a vertically standing metal rod cast a significant shadow. By factoring the length of the shadow with his assumed distance to the sun, Eratosthenes recorded a measurement of Earth's circumference close to what heliocentrist astronomers still use today. The fact of the matter is, however, that Eratosthenes' calculations were made assuming the sun to be millions of miles away, so that its rays would fall perfectly parallel, even in points as divergent as Sienne and Alexandria. This faulty assumed premise led to his faulty conclusion, which was eventually exposed upon the invention of the nautical sextant. Using sextants and plane trigonometry, by measuring the sun's angle at 2 points on Earth simultaneously and factoring their distance from each other, the Pythagorean theorem reveals both the height and dimensions of the sun. Using this method, the sun and moon have repeatedly been calculated to be approximately 32 miles in diameter, 3,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. High-altitude balloon footage has also filmed lighting hotspots on clouds, proving the sun to be local and acting as a spotlight, and not a burning ball of gas millions of miles away, as supposed by heliocentrists. After Eratosthenes, the globe Earth theory completely disappeared from philosophical thought and recorded history for almost 2 millennia. Geocentric flat Earth cosmologies continued to reign supreme, with even Eratosthenes himself touted as the father of geography, depicting the Earth as flat in his famous 194 BC map of the world.
So one last thing, which should be obvious, if you pay attention and think about it. If you send a ship straight to the horizon, eventually it begins to disappear until it's no longer visible beyond your horizon.
Right.
And you should ask yourself, what kind of surface would produce that result?
The ocean,
if it's
the ocean has a ramp.
Seafarers do this. And so, however flat they would have imagined the Earth to be, they couldn't have accepted it to be completely flat, because otherwise you would never not see the sun. Okay.
His next argument, just like the previous two, comes from ancient Greek philosophers who have been debunked since the time they were presented, even way back then. The fact that NASA's top modern globe proofs are still simply regurgitating long refuted claims from over 2,000 years ago should raise some suspicion. The fact of the matter is that the law of perspective on plane surfaces dictates and necessitates this occurrence. For example, a girl wearing a dress walking away towards the horizon will appear to sink into the earth the farther away she walks. Her feet will disappear from view first, and the distance between the ground and the bottom of her dress will gradually diminish until after about half a mile, it seems like her dress is touching the ground as she walks on invisible legs. The same happens with cars speeding away. The axles gradually get lower, and the wheels vanish until it appears as if the car is gliding along its body. Such is the case on plane surfaces. The lowest parts of objects receding from a given point of observation necessarily disappear before the highest. Now, with modern telescopes and cameras, we can prove this as well by successfully zooming in on ships that have gone beyond the horizon and bringing them completely back into full view, hull and all.
Also, if I just tell you, Chuck, walk due east, okay?
Right.
And don't ever stop.
Right.
I just turn around my chair and face this way, and eventually you're going to come back.
Right. And you'll probably be about 150 years old. I am no Forrest Gump. That is how long it would take me to run the Earth.
There is a popular myth taught to school children, which most adults today still believe, that people in history have traveled in perfectly straight lines, eastwards or westwards, and eventually arrived back at their starting point. It is heralded as proof of the globe Earth and claimed that hundreds of adventurers since Magellan have completed such successful circumnavigations, but the truth is that no one in history has ever set off traveling in a perfectly straight line and returned back at their starting point. All successful circumnavigations in history, whether by sea or air, have instead followed the same pattern, which is sailing or flying the most convenient route from port to port, stopping for supplies and refueling until a complete circle has been made. Not a single sailor or aviator in history has or could travel only in the same one perfectly straight direction and magically arrive back where they began. This ridiculous lie becomes obvious when critically examined, but when taught to young children, successfully bends and warps their minds into accepting globe indoctrination. Unlike the cardinal directions on a compass rose, north, south, east, and west on Earth are not simply straight lines separated by 90 degrees. North, rather than being an upward shooting arrow, is actually a point, a center point, the center point of the entire Earth, known as the geographic North Pole, situated directly below Polaris, the North Pole star, the only motionless star in the heavens, which marks the exact northern center point of the sky. South, rather than being a downward shooting arrow, is actually every line tangent to the northern center point, or in other words, every straight line extending outwards from the North Pole heads due south. East and west, rather than being right and left facing arrows, are actually clockwise and counterclockwise circles around the pole. The sun, moon, and stars all rise in the east and set in the west, making perfect circles over and around us every day. As you can observe, they travel in a circular westward path over and around the Earth, and do not all travel in a straight leftward direction as suggested by a compass rose. Likewise, navigators since ancient times have used Polaris to guide their ships, knowing that Polaris was the heavenly North Pole. South was traveling keeping your back to Polaris. East meant traveling keeping your left shoulder 90 degrees to the pole star, and west meant traveling keeping your right shoulder 90 degrees to the pole star. All circumnavigations in history have been eastwards or westwards, and never northwards or southwards, because the latter is geographically impossible.
For me, the fact that there's a rise of flat earthers, there's evidence of two things.
Okay.
One, we live in a country that protects free speech.
That's actually kind of awesome.
And two, we live in a country with a failed educational system.
Ooh, that one hurt.
Yeah, the one
If
that
there's
you
one thing Neil and I agree on, it is that our public education system is indeed a complete failure, brainwashing vulnerable, impressionable young children with mentally and spiritually damaging pseudoscientific indoctrination. The widespread belief that humans are merely evolved apes clinging to a spinning space ball hurtling around the sun is proof of this. The modern rise of the geocentric level Earth cosmology is a direct response and reaction to humanity finally collectively waking up to countless centuries of uncontested lies and propaganda.
Okay, so
tell me, Neil.
The sound was like kind of the same. So I will play the other video. I will continue on it because it was very interesting. Excuse me.
So if we change our, if we go from a hallway into an outdoor setting and we just change our horizon distance, there's no reason why this isn't a different aspect of perspective. It's the same exact thing. We're just outdoors. And instead of looking at a flashlight, we are now looking at a cruise ship or a boat or something else going over what we believe is a physical horizon, but is nothing more than an apparent position of our vision and how our vision works along flat surfaces. So same thing again, I'm in here in a Walmart and then no light is visible. I'm along the floor. So there's no reason to believe why this aspect of vision would change if I were to remove the walls and the ceiling of this Walmart and extend the floor for miles and miles, and I were just to stand up. It would be the same exact phenomenon, but just occur further and further away. There's no reason to believe that this is curvature. So I just do that here. I remove the walls and the ceiling. I'm still on the floor, and then I extend my floor, let's say, to become some crops or something like that. It doesn't matter. And now I'm just looking at a tractor going off into the distance, and it disappears as well. So here's the footage with some more exact measurements, and this is just later in the day. And so you can see kind of what occurs along this flat surface. And I'm calling it flat because by globe standards, this is a flat surface. Essentially, no bulge is apparent across 400 feet. But yet we have an issue here. So please watch.
Okay, here we are at the lake. It's a nice clear night. Perfectly still waters. I'll put the coordinates on Google for where exactly I am across this lake and the distance of the height, the distance of the light height, and the iPhone height. Bye.
So here we are, we're taking it at 2.5 inches just to be in the middle of the light. Here's the setup. And there I'm just barely touching the ground, touching the water. You can see the ripples just starting as the iPhone case just touches the water. There's no immersion of the camera or anything under the water. Here it is zoomed in and a still shot. Missing now. Slow motion. can see the autofocusing occurring. And I stopped it here so you can see kind of that there appears to be basically a hard line on this frame.
There's a clear cutoff from the bottom up, and it's very abrupt.
Again, just some more slow motion of the other times that I went up and down. So these are the distances. So again, 0.1 to 0.2. I basically sat there for about 2 or 3 minutes and allowed the positioning system to identify where I was before I pinpointed each point. And that's very accurate, for at least where I was. So could it be a few feet off one way or another? Sure. But roughly it's about 400 feet at least. Again, you can see the measurement of my iPhone case to the center of the camera, and it is about ½ an inch. And you can see that I took the 2.5 inches for the height of the light, which was being generous. I didn't do the top of the light, which the whole light disappears, but I'm just going to do the middle of the light. And so some still shots again, as I'm about 1.5 feet off the water, you can still clearly see the light. And you can see a little bit of reflection on the water with the light, but the light is still visible. And then as I am 0.5 inches off, there is clearly no light visible whatsoever. And then in the bottom of I just took some still shots of how that, when it was autofocusing, and you can see the halo and how that halo definitely appears to be cut off bottom first. So what should we be seeing if we were to be living on a globe? If this phenomenon right here is because this water is curved, and curved water is what obstructs our vision of things beyond a horizon, a physical horizon, then what should we be seeing? Well, the short answer is that we should be seeing this entire light. There should be no loss. And so the drop essentially should be about 0.004 feet, or about 0.048 inches, or which comes out to about 1.22 millimeters. And if you know how big a millimeter is, that's extremely small. And we are definitely far more than 1.22 millimeters with that light above the water. Furthermore, my horizon distance should be about 1,314 feet, which is well beyond the 400 feet that we were at. So by all accounts, we should be seeing this entire light the whole time. So if we go to some Earth curve calculators, you can see, again, by their mock-ups that there should be nothing hidden in this situation. It should be completely visible with a globe with an R radius of 3959 miles. Or something else occurs in our vision to cause this effect. Once again, just confirmation that the bulge height is extremely small in this situation, and that the hidden height is nothing. So in this situation, this curve calculator says 0.3 millimeters is the bulge height, which is negligible. And again, yet we have 2.5 inches are being obstructed in this situation. So another curve calculator. And again, notice that all of them model this as if you are looking down across a bulge, and that's why things disappears, because you are either leaning backwards and looking across a bulge in front of you, or your eyes are tilted down and the object is tilting away from you. That's how this is modeled. This is not how this works. So again, under no situation should we see this kind of obstruction. Some more Earth curve calculators, again, 0 millimeters, 0 feet, 0.00 feet. One of them gave 0.237 inches. So one of them gave at least a 0.23 quarter of an inch, but that doesn't matter. Again, we were 2.5 inches off the water. And so there was no refraction. You could not really say that this wasn't a refraction phenomenon if you were to go back and look here at these conditions. This is across 400 feet. It's crystal clear. The water is not moving whatsoever. And the temperature is roughly the same between the water and the outside air. It was a fairly warm night. So
Okay.
I'm not too concerned that refraction would play almost any role in this whatsoever. Of our 0.5 inch observer height and granting 2.5 inches of drop basically as the midpoint of the flashlight, not the top even. What should the radius of Earth be if we're going to assume that bottom up obstruction is?
Okay, so I have a troll, True Shape. You were wrong about flat Earth if you believed flat Earth was true. Is there a question in there, or are you just going to be a troll, right? Like, have you not seen like the previous 20 minutes of the video? No, you haven't seen any of the refuted videos, none of that? No, the references? Okay, go away.
Is always caused by curvature. So in other words, if I'm losing 2.5 inches across 400 feet, what kind of radius would that purport to, right? What kind of globe should I be standing on if bottom-up disappearance is caused by physical obstruction? So when you do the math for this using trigonometry, where our theta angle comes out to 0.0175 degrees, which is again close to 1 arc minute, and our height of about 2.5 inches of drop, then you end up with 870 miles of R. So R is 870 miles in this case, which is well below the 3,959 miles that is purported to be. You can use an alternative method using the 8-inch drop approximation for the first mile versus our 2.5-inch drop over our 410 feet. You can just analyze the ratios between the two, and you get to something about 4 times greater curve rate because our obstruction is just too much. And so, or it's about 1/4 the R basically. So as approximation again, but you get something where 990 miles. So we can just kind of, you can average some of these methods together, and you can say that roughly we should be standing on a globe that's about a radius of 900 miles. We're just going to use it as an approximation. So our new Earth circumference is 5,654 miles versus the expected 24,800 miles that they say it is. So Earth is now 1/4 the size it should be, and it ends up being smaller than the moon, using the rationale that
Feel
this
free to
is a
ask
physical
questions.
curvature phenomenon.
Like I put out videos there, but feel free to ask any question you want. Like I'm not going to entertain people being insulting and or just like not open-minded or willing to look at what I'm sharing, even like the references that I've cited on countless videos. But if you actually have genuine questions that make sense and are respectful, I'll answer them. Obviously, I have plenty of times before.
So you can believe that, or you can believe something else is responsible for this bottom up first, or this bottom first disappearance phenomenon. So is information loss an everyday aspect of our visual horizons? Is it why is this occurring? Is it secondary to tangible surfaces? In other words, to our proximity to a tangible surface limits the amount of information that we're being allowed to process. So I just want you to focus on that. It may not be that the bottom of the objects disappear from being too small to see, but rather that the ground can only extend so far when we are close to it. We can only see so far along the ground. It's not so much the object itself or the bottom of the boat itself getting too small. It's the fact that you can't see that far along the ground, but it still occupies 50% of your vision.
So we have seen how mirages, and how your proximity to a surface or compressed angles will obscure objects, bottom first on a flat plane, even if it were perfectly flat. Another way objects can become obscured bottom first on a flat plane is simply due to foreground objects, such as uneven ground, grass, waves, swells, etc.
Okay. I like to break it up a little bit just so it's not so much mathematics and or really like heavy thinking stuff. And so I'm going to go back to Rumble. Go back to her. I don't know if you're not aware of her and you claim to be a globe earther, then you gotta do more work. Gotta do some work because I've debunked her countless times and I've shared her stuff. It's NASA's top globe proofs debunked.
Some of the easiest ways that you can prove that the Earth is round, because apparently this is something that we're debating. I have no idea why. Oscar, you asked the question, what are some of the easiest ways that you can prove that the Earth is round? Because apparently this is something that we're debating. I have no idea why. That's a hard thing for me to even start talking about because there are so many proofs that the Earth is round. It's difficult to know where to start. And it's not okay to think that the Earth is flat. This is not a viable argument.
To begin with, if you truly believe the Earth to be a triangle or a dodecahedron, that is most certainly okay, and you're right to do so. We all have the right to our own thoughts, beliefs, experience, intuitions, and discernment, regardless of how common or widely accepted they are. Telling people up front that having an alternative perspective from yours is, quote, not okay, is incredibly narcissistic, abusive, and an attempt to infantilize the listener into accepting the fallacy of appeal to authority. It is absolutely okay to question the shape of the Earth. In fact, the scientific method itself requires constant questioning and experimentation to reach increasingly precise conclusions. Once a scientific postulate becomes solidified into an unquestionable dogma, it becomes religion, not science. And people demanding your allegiance to their dogma, like Michelle here, are acting far more like evangelical priests than true scientists. NASA themselves have already changed the alleged shape of the Earth thrice in their short history, first telling us we lived on a perfect sphere, then changing the shape into an oblate spheroid flattened at the poles, then changing again to a pear-shaped spheroid bulging out in the southern hemisphere.
I have friends who have been on the International Space Station. They have orbited the Earth once every 90 minutes. You know, I have had personal experience with people that have been up in space and can see with their own eyes that the Earth is round. And of course, we've taken all these amazing pictures from space. They're so beautiful, all those pictures of the Earth. So I don't really know what's going on right now with this Earth is flat thing.
Here, Michelle condescendingly delivers two more examples of sophistry, namely hearsay and another appeal to authority. Because she has some fellow Freemason Eastern Star actor-not friends who claim the Earth is a spinning ball, Michelle wants us to accept that kind of second-hand hearsay as scientific proof. Then she laughs and talks about pictures. Pictures like these, you mean? And these?
They always say the same thing.
Michelle was directly asked for scientific proofs of her claim, and the first two she gives are because other people say so, and because there's pictures. Well, Michelle, I know you already know this, but people can lie. Pictures can be faked. Neither of those are permissible as scientific evidence. So why are you dancing around the question with sophistry and condescension instead of just providing actual proof of your claim?
There are proofs all around you. It is not difficult to know that the Earth is round. In fact, people have known this for way more than 2,000 years. The ancient Greeks actually had a number of really elegant, wonderful proofs that the Earth was a sphere. One of the things you can see yourself with a pair of binoculars is if you actually go out to a lake and there are boats on that lake, the farther away a boat is, the more the bottom of the boat will disappear and you'll basically just see the mast of the boat. And as a boat goes farther and farther away, the last thing you will see is the very top of the mast of that boat. And that's because the boat is actually going over the horizon that's curved.
So once she finally gets around to her three supposed scientific proofs of a ball Earth, they are all from ancient Greek astronomers who have been debunked since the time they were presented, even way back then. Her first is the dinosaur claim that ships disappearing beyond the horizon hull first somehow prove the Earth to be a globe. The fact of the matter is that the law of perspective on plane surfaces dictates and necessitates this occurrence. For example, a girl wearing a dress walking away towards the horizon will appear to sink into the earth the farther away she walks. Her feet will disappear from view first, and the distance between the ground and the bottom of her dress will gradually diminish until after about half a mile, it seems like her dress is touching the ground as she walks on invisible legs. The same happens with cars speeding away. The axles gradually get lower and the wheels vanish until it appears as if the car is gliding along its body. Such is the case on plane surfaces. The lowest parts of objects receding from a given point of observation necessarily disappear before the highest. Now, with modern telescopes and cameras, we can prove this as well by successfully zooming in on ships that have gone beyond the horizon and bringing them completely back into full view, hull and all.
Now, another way that you can tell that we're on a sphere is to think about how there's something called the tropics on the Earth. And the tropics are places near the equator of the Earth where sometimes the sun is overhead in the sky. And this was actually something that the Greeks used not only to prove that the Earth was round about 2,000 years ago, but they actually measured the circumference of the Earth accurate to within just a couple percent. There was a really brilliant Greek scientist called Eratosthenes. And Eratosthenes noticed that there was a town called Syene. And on a certain date, the sun would actually shine straight down to the bottom of a well. That meant the sun was directly overhead. You could look down a well and see the sun shining back at you. And on the very same date, farther away in the city of Alexandria, that didn't happen. The sun was not directly overhead. It was a slight angle. And all that Eratosthenes did was he measured the difference in the angle of the sun. And he rationed that that change in angle from one city to another was probably indicative of us being on a curved surface. So another really simple proof is that on any given date, at different cities and different places around the world, the sun is at different angles in the sky. That wouldn't happen if the Earth wasn't round.
For her second supposed proof, Michelle tells the story of Eratosthenes, who noted that at noon during the summer solstice in Syene, the sun cast no shadow and the rays could reach straight to the bottom of his well. Yet meanwhile, in Alexandria, a vertically standing metal rod cast a significant shadow. By factoring the length of the shadow with his assumed distance to the sun, Eratosthenes recorded a measurement of Earth's circumference close to what heliocentrist astronomers still use today. The fact of the matter is, however, that Eratosthenes' calculations were made assuming the sun to be millions of miles away, so that its rays would fall perfectly parallel even in points as divergent as Syene and Alexandria. This faulty assumed premise led to his faulty conclusion, which was eventually exposed upon the invention of the nautical sextant. Using sextants in plane trigonometry, by measuring the sun's angle at 2 points on Earth simultaneously and factoring their distance from each other, the Pythagorean theorem reveals both the height and dimensions of the sun. Using this method, the sun and moon have repeatedly been calculated to be approximately 32 miles in diameter, 3,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. High-altitude balloon footage has also filmed lighting hotspots on clouds, proving the sun to be local and acting as a spotlight, and not a burning ball of gas millions of miles away, as supposed by heliocentrists. After Eratosthenes, the globe-Earth theory completely disappeared from philosophical thought and recorded history for almost 2 millennia. Geocentric flat Earth cosmologies continued to reign supreme, with even Eratosthenes himself touted as the father of geography, depicting the Earth as flat in his famous 194 BC map of the world.
Then there are some other proofs that are a little more obscure, but they're actually really lovely. And one is to observe what happens during a lunar eclipse. Now, a lunar eclipse happens when the Earth casts a shadow on the moon. What's happening in that case is that the sun is on one side of the Earth is in the middle, and it's casting a shadow. The Earth is casting a shadow on the moon. And as the shadow moves across the moon, you'll notice that the shadow is curved, it's round. So something like the sun that's bigger than the Earth and is able to cast a shadow of the Earth on the moon can actually show you the shape of the Earth.
Her final and most ridiculous supposed proof of the shape of the Earth beneath our feet is accomplished by looking at a light in the sky. That's right. When you ask scientists for empirical, measurable proof of the shape of the Earth beneath our feet, they inevitably turn their noses up to the sky and start talking about the shape of things up there. Imagine inviting a contractor over to your house to measure the dimensions of your floor, and he immediately gets out his tape measure and starts measuring all the recessed lights in the ceiling. To this day, heliocentrists still offer this argument as proof of a spherical Earth, claiming that during
Oh. I did not mean to. I feel like we already saw that one. I'm so sorry if this is redundant. Anyways, I'll go back to the other one again. Once it starts. Oh, I had it stopped even at 33 minutes.
So
a lot of Freemason. It's all Freemasons that were astronauts that actually landed on the moon.
now we're at secondary to small obstructions within perspective. So within our floor example here, the last 3 golf balls are all on the same horizon line, and they no longer ascend within perspective. The floor tiles are a bit uneven in this case, and if there were an obstruction nearby, say 7 feet away, it would obscure the image further away at 130 feet. If we're beyond the horizon line at 95 feet in this example, we have lost a height equal to d tan theta, or 130 feet times the tangent of 1 arc minute, or 0.55 inches. The golf balls have a diameter of 1.6 inches, so our golf ball is reduced to 1.6 inches minus 0.5 equal to 1.13 inches. Again, given an obstruction, or given the amount of set. So because perspective ascends quickly and then tapers, an obstruction nearby would completely obscure the bottom of an object far away. Using similar triangles, and assuming we are at the portion of vision where this perspective plateau occurs, again, typically beyond 20 feet or so, we see that if there were an obstruction 30 feet away, near that second golf ball, or just 6 millimeters above the eye line, it would be enough to obscure the entire golf ball 130 feet away. So we can have summarized this effect by stating small obstructions in the foreground obstruct distant objects. So if that doesn't make sense, maybe it will here if I explain the diagram. So the red line from the eye to the purple line is again going to have a rapid ascent rate, an exponential ascent rate. And so we know that objects, even though they encroach upon that purple line, they don't actually start to set for quite a bit distance away. So that means that there's essentially a plateau or a table of an area or distance across which an obstruction along that point would completely obscure the object further down the road because its angular size is going to get smaller. And so we calculated that for the amount of the golf ball that would be missing at 130 feet, just from diffraction, we would get roughly 0.13 inches of loss. And so, or excuse me, 0.55 inches of loss, and that would give us about a golf ball roughly 1.13 inches tall. And so that's why I've cut off the bottom of the golf ball in the diagram. So that's what we're looking at. And so on the bottom right-hand picture, I've kind of pointed to that golf ball that is 130 feet away. And so if we were to put an obstruction, let's say this blue triangle, and we were to put it in the nearby vision, let's say at 30 feet away, and I've kind of put that there on the lower right, to put the little blue triangle next to the 30-foot ball. But you can see how if I were to put that in line with the 130-foot golf ball, it would completely obscure that ball. And we can calculate that ratio or what height would be required to obscure that distant object by just using similar triangles. And so that's what I've done with that formula, solving for x. So in this case, x is 6 millimeters. So a 6 millimeter obstruction above the purple line completely obscures the entire golf ball 130 feet away.
1,849 meters high and is 7,500 kilometers away from the UK. That means at that distance, the angular size of Mount Everest from the UK would be 0.06 degrees. So within the resolution limit of our eyes.
As you have learned, Dave, that would only be true if Mount Everest was floating high in the sky, without a surface to compress the angles and with no atmospheric conditions to obscure it as well. Those conditions will never exist, nor do they need to for us to know that we can still see and communicate way beyond the globe's capabilities, as has been demonstrated numerous times.
And that's just the naked eye. Armed with the Nikon P1000, we should be able to see that thing clear as day. Now, I'm sure flat earthers will point out that we wouldn't be able to see that far because it wouldn't be clear as day. There would be clouds and bad weather between us and Everest. But the summit of Mount Everest is often above the clouds, and so are commercial aircraft at cruising altitude.
You seem as if you like to talk. I like to let people talk who like to talk. It makes it easier to find out how full of shit they are.
That was funny.
And yet, I am still waiting to see a flat earther with the Nikon P1000 be able to show us Mount Everest from a plane over the UK.
That is a very specific request, Dave, and it would be instantly written off as something else, like a cloud, or as an error by the globe proponents and anti-flat earthers anyways. The fact of the matter is that we already have several observations from an airplane that debunks the globe.
You're gonna be totally amazed, folks. We'll be applying the principles of photogrammetry to the aerial infrared images that I've taken, and we'll be using
I've already showed this on so many different videos, but like the curvature has been debunked so many times via so many different videos and photos and experiments and
professional software to extract the 3D models of our world, and the results are simply shocking. First, I'm going to show you.
And you can take a look at Eric Dubay's 200 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe. You can look at William Carpenter's work, Alex Gleason's work. These are authors, these are scientists and experts, like that are even like from the 1800s and beyond, that irrefutable evidence. Andrew Henry, Eric Dubay has multiple books too. Sandro Bonacci has good books out there that connects, that connects the astrotheosophy piece.
It works. I took a trip from San Francisco to Portland, right past Mount Shasta. And here's a few clips. I also captured a set of images with my camera, as you can see here, as I was flying past it, because I knew I wanted to try out this photogrammetry. The software I'll be using is called Metashape, and this is how it's used. Photogrammetry.
Okay, let's see what else that I've got here. I'm going to my history. He's got so many good videos out. That one's just not one of the best. Like, I'm kind of bored with that one, so. Oh. thought you were watching the video. I thought it was on complete full screen, that I wasn't even being shown. Sorry.
Welcome to Flat Earth Smarts. So, you think the world is flat. For what it's worth, so do I. Why? It's simple. It looks flat, and there's nothing can be done to prove otherwise. If there was, the scientists would have done it a long time ago. The fact remains that they can't. So, where to from here? Let's get something out of the way before we go any further. It'll save the naysayers watching further. Flat Earth Smart will not provide some magic proof that the Earth is flat. I came to Flat Earth a few years ago. Don't concern yourself with how.
I don't know if this is real or not, but I don't know if that's Mark Sargent or not. But if it is, then hi. that's kind of an honor to meet you electronically. And I really like your work, and I appreciate what you've shared as well for years. Also one of the originals.
I was on board with this when the story broke in 2015, and it afforded me the luxury of being able to sit back and watch it unfold without the need to weigh up the arguments. So why this now? Because there's not enough hours in the day. You undoubtedly walked into this without expecting it. You didn't go to school to learn about the Earth being flat. You didn't attend a college course to find out.
Yeah, so Mark Sargent is someone that's been there's so many different interviews and lectures and likely books and stuff like that as well. And so if anyone has any questions, I think that now would be the time regarding Flat Earth. For Flat Earth Smarts, there's multiple different videos. I haven't seen all of them yet, but they're all very interesting. And so this is just the first one that I'm sharing now with you guys.
Most likely, you were bumming around on the internet or killing time on YouTube and decided that you'd have a look at this ridiculous idea and shut those flat earthers up once and for all. If you're like me, you grew up on a globe. This is one of the few subjects that are taught from a start position of ridicule. How many of us heard those stupid people in the olden days thought the earth was flat? Aren't they stupid? Well, guess what? It's 2016, and there's more questions now on the subject than there ever have been. I won't belabor you with them for a moment.
Yeah, like 7 years ago.
As I said,
Years ago.
months ago, I don't have the magic.
No, it's 2024.
I don't have a silver bullet that will kill the globe either. It's undoubted that YouTube has provided many of us, myself included, with lots of things to think about. So what's to be done with it all? There are not enough hours in the day to watch and think on all the people have to say on the subject. Maybe it's time to get smart on how we look into it. If you let YouTube lead you, you'll be bounced from one opinion to the next. None of them will agree with each other. Some will have good points, and some will be not so good. So, at the risk of sounding all biblical, how to separate the wheat from the chaff? If you've just come to this, perhaps the best suggestion is to turn off your computer for today. Go to bed with a warm drink and wake up ready to start on it tomorrow. If you've gotten this far, one more night and a good sleep is not going to stop you here. You will not find the answers if you stay up looking for the one video that will answer the matter. When you wake up in the morning, you can start, you'll have the rest of your days to look for some answers. But before you do, there's a few questions that you can answer, and you won't find the answers on YouTube or on the internet. If you can answer these questions for yourself, you can steer your own way through this maze, and hopefully you won't be swayed a long way by anybody else. Can you put everything you've learned about the world to one side for a while and look at a subject with a clean sheet of paper?
Yep.
Can you accept?
You know the spin, the shape, the diameter, the radius, the circumference, the distance from the sun, the moon, all of these different things. Do you know the like the different? Do you know, like just there's so much that people don't know.
that what you think you know about the world might be wrong? Can you accept that everyone makes mistakes, even scientists? Can you believe in something that nobody else seems to completely agree with, or that people think is plain dumb? Can you form an opinion based entirely on things that you have discovered for yourself? Can you hold belief that is unpopular among the people that you believe you know well? Can you make a decision about a hot topic and defend it?
Very interesting. Okay, so regarding the Earth as well, like I've talked about this before, but I do have a chart for anyone that's new, and this is just notes that I put together because I do believe that this is a cosmos or a universe. It's it's one energy or force that's split into two to experience itself in duality, right? So then you've got electricity and magnetism, you've got gravitating forces, you've got radiating forces, like I've said like earlier, centripetal, centrifugal. But this is a flat plane of inertia being projected via hyperboloids and toroidal fields, right? And the toroidal fields, what I believe that these fields, magnetic fields, whatever you want to call them, it's due to the luminaries, the major ones, these 7 original being like the most prominent, the 7 original planets or luminaries or planes. And so, like I've mentioned it, and I feel like the connection with the 7 and the 12 with this divine clock also has to do with our bodies. We are also electrical magnetic beings, and this is a thinking mind, a thinking universe. And so I've gone through this, but with the 7 original planets, if you go from the outer field. I don't know if someone's at the door. If you look at the outer field, some people believe that that's possibly the luminary that's considered to be Saturn or Saturnalia, and Kronos, and the sorry, my dogs are barking at the door. The keeper of time, or the the time being the dimension, and like the hyperboloids and toroidal fields that I'm talking about also can look like an hourglass as well. And again, this being the inverted magnetic fields that do that. Anyway, so I'm just going to close my door. Sorry, my dogs are distracting me. Ugh. Okay, so I set it at the bottom with Saturn, Saturnalia, and I've said this before that Saturn rules. If you want to talk about the zodiac signs, it rules Capricorn and Aquarius, and Capricorn is represented by a goat in some cultures and traditions, and Aquarius is represented by a human, a water bearer, even though it's an air sign. And so you've got an earth and an air sign. And then in North America, or closer to the center of the earth, where it's colder, it's also colder, obviously, in Antarctica and stuff like that. But like you've got that happy medium around the equator, where you have like perpetually like really, really great weather. Canada's not one of those areas. Like right now, there's a lot of snow here, and I've shoveled a lot of friggin' snow. But anyway, so you've got that magnetic field, also Saturn, and then that's why even with like the Satan is represented by half goat, half human, and so even with Saturn, it's correlated with the root chakra, and so the first chakra, the day of the week being Saturday, the element lead, and the color red. So that's why Satan always also often is depicted as being red in color, and then there's different luminaries that are considered suns and moons, or both, right? And I'll get to that as well. But Saturn is also considered to be a sun, right? And with suns being magnetic, radiating, expansive in nature, heating, positive energy. And then you've got the moons being the luminaries that are cooling, negative energy. Oh, and then masculine being magnetic as well. And then the electrical being the female. So a lot of people, so I have a different take on this flat simulation Earth, whatever you want to call it, than anyone I've ever talked to. There's people that have, again, it's great content, but we're all focused on our own niches. And I'm just bringing something new to the table with this stuff, like just bringing in the luminaries. And then if you look at the old Prague clock, you can see that Saturn could possibly be larger, like in like the more north western areas of the Earth that we're not seeing, that's not being depicted, but we could possibly see the reflection on the moon. But anyway, what we're calling the moon. And so, what else can I say about that? The second chakra, the day of the week correlated with that being Thursday, the luminary being Jupiter being classified as a moon, and it also has phases. Just so that's pretty interesting. The element that's associated with it is tin, the color being orange, and Sagittarius and Pisces being the two zodiac signs that are ruled by Jupiter. Sagittarius being the positive, radiating masculine energy or sign, and then Pisces being the negative, the negative electrical cooling female energy in that row, whatever you want to call it. And like I said, being considered a moon, it has phases. The third chakra, the celiac plexus or the solar plexus, day of the week associated with it is Tuesday. The luminary being Mars. Mars is also classified as the sun. The element associated with it is iron, the color yellow, and the two signs Scorpio and Aries. And that's why, and then Mars being correlated also with war and stuff like that. I won't get too much into the correlations between the luminaries and what they signify or represent, because this could be a friggin' 10-hour video just with that alone. And Scorpio being the negative female electrical energy or sun in that, and then Taurus being, then Aries being the positive magnetic radiating. And that's not like that. The fourth chakra is the heart chakra. The day of the week correlated with it is Friday. The two zodiac signs connected to it are Libra and Taurus. The luminary associated with it is Venus. Venus is also considered to be a moon, and it retrogrades, by the way. It spins in a different direction, and it also has phases. So very interesting. And then you have the element associated with it is copper, the color green, and green being, and then it's funny too, when you look at the fourth out of the seven chakras, or the colors, or the days of the week, or whatever you want to call it, that's in the center, right? So we're perceiving or experiencing life on this flat plane of inertia, and we see more shades of green than any other color. And even with that, it's at the center of of this energetic diagram that I'm talking about as well. And so that's very interesting. And Libra and Taurus, Libra being the positive, magnetic, radiating, masculine energy. Taurus being the negative, female electrical cooling, generating energy. The fifth chakra is the throat chakra. Day of the week, Wednesday. The luminary being Mercury, which is the only original luminary that's considered to be a sun and a moon. So androgynous or whatever you want to call it. That's one of the luminaries that is. The element being Mercury as well, or Quicksilver, but Mercury, the color blue. And then the two signs associated with it is Virgo and Gemini, Virgo being the only zodiac sign that's represented by a woman. So you've got Virgo and Gemini, Virgo being the negative female electrical energy, Gemini being the positive magnetic radiating masculine energy. The sixth chakra, third eye, day of the week associated with it is Monday. The luminary is what we call the moon. And there's dual signs associated with five of the original luminaries, and then there's luminaries like the sun and the moon that it only has one zodiac sign represented, or that it rules, and it just so happens to be when the sun is at the highest point in the sky, and we have the longest amount of days and shortest amount of nights in the northern regions, especially during these periods. And so you've got the third eye chakra, the sixth chakra, day of the week, Monday or moon day. You've got Cancer again, the represented or ruling the element silver, and the color being indigo correlated with that. The seventh chakra is the crown chakra. And you've got Leo, ruled by the sun, the element gold. And then the sun has like these golden rays, right? You've got silver rays of the moon, and you've got the golden rays of the sun. And the color associated with it is purple. And then you've got the degrees of a circle that are also where you have 5 pairs of degrees that are negative and positive, and then you have 0 degrees on one end of a circle, and then 180 at another end. But then you've got the 30, 60, 90, 120, 150 in the pairs, and so like that's very interesting as well. Yeah, so there's a lot more that I can talk about, but the luminaries I do believe are electromagnetic in nature, and they do assist in kind of perceiving and experiencing this multidimensional flat plane of inertia. And there's no way of leaving it, right? So like this dome or firmament that even the Bibles talk about, even the Quran talks about, I've talked about that before, where there's a lot of truths, but there's not facts, right? And there's a lot of, it's allegorical in nature, all of them. And it's based on sun worship too. So I can even talk about the sun's path, the ecliptical sinusoidal path that it takes. It moves from the Tropic of Cancer in a like above us, 15 degrees every hour. And so it moving through the 12 different zodiac signs. And by the way, so many different countless religions and cultures and ideologies have 12 different signs in the sky, right, that are represented by different figures or shapes or whatever you want to call it, but it all has to do with astronomy and astrotheosophy. And so the sun does move on its ecliptical path 15 degrees every hour, and then through a zodiac sign, which is 30 degrees every 2 hours. And that's why we have the 24-hour clock as it passes through the 12 signs, going through them like 2 hours in each, or staying 2 hours in each, rising in the east, setting in the west. And there's so many different mythical figures as well throughout history, like Jesus Christ and Mithras and Dionysus and Horus and countless others that do talk about like the sun's path. And then I've talked about as well where like on the spring equinox, it's in and around the 20th of March of every single friggin' year. We have equal amount of day and night, and the sun's on the it's traveling on the equator or the equatorial path, and then it starts going up from there, and you start to have longer days, shorter nights, and the sun gets higher in the sky as well until it reaches its highest point on or around the 21st or 22nd of June, again, depending on who you talk to. And then after 3 days, staying at its highest point, not moving from like the highest point every single day, it starts its descent, or it dies. And that's why on the 24th of June of every single year, it's Saint John the Baptist Day, or Saint Jean the Baptiste, si tu veux parler en français avec ça, parce que je viens de Québec et je parle français aussi. En tout cas. Yeah, and then it starts its descent. And then on or around the 23rd of September, you have the spring. No, the fall. I always freaking mess it up. It's the fall, autumn, the autumn or fall equinox on the 23rd of September, which is when you look at Da Vinci's Last Supper. That's where Jesus is actually sitting. He's sitting at the Last Supper. He's sitting at the fall or autumn equinox. The fall, talking about his death. You know what I mean? It's like, come on. And then so the 23rd of September, equal amount of day and night, depending on, again, on the area in the world that you're at, right? So like North America. And then it starts, and then he starts his descent from the highest point, or sorry, from the equator again, so equal amount of day and night. And then on the 21st of December or the 22nd, depending on who you talk to, like what location in the world, is the winter solstice, which is when the sun is at the lowest point in the sky and we have the least amount of daylight and the most night. Okay, so it's like that's not even a month ago for us in here in Canada, and then the sun stays at the lowest point with the shortest of day for 3 days. Okay, and then on the 25th of December of every single friggin' year, the sun starts its ascent from death, perceived to death, after staying like at the lowest point for 3 days on the chart, and then finally starting. And that's when mountain goats are also represented in Capricorn as well, because like they can climb really, really steep friggin' mountains, like, you know what I mean? So like going from the lowest point on the sinusoidal cycloid ecliptical path, whatever you want to call it, in the sky, above us, 93 million miles away, right? And Coriolis effect and stuff like that. Crepuscular rays prove that it's not. And yeah, I could talk about so much more with that, but I will leave it at that. And yeah, like it was like just it's pretty neat that Mark Sargent of all people, like I can't stop by. I would love to absolutely like do a show with him, and I just don't know how to invite him on, and I'm sure he's literally busy. He had even mentioned that he had to talk to a flat earther from Israel, so probably a lot busier than me, but I will leave it at that, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful day.